like I say, I'll keep it pretty informal, and would love to get some feedback from this group on that. And then for the second thing, Cello's going to provide some updates on, Cello and Scott, some updates on what's going on in the other WISE areas or other WISE teams that might be of interest to this group, knowing that you guys are kind of plugged in different areas. So if that sounds good to everybody, and does anybody else have any other kind of topics you want to hit besides that on a Monday morning?
Go for it, Dan.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and looks like the recording.
And Jenny's just going to be here the first half hour.
Yeah. So I got to get through my stuff so I can get her words of wisdom before she has to jump off. So yeah. And thanks again for the presentation last meeting. I thought that was great and gave me some good energy and some good thoughts around what we're doing here, and some encouragement too. So I'm going to share what we've been doing in the CIP delivery area, and I've got two things I want to share with you guys. We left off year 2 where we tackled kind of laying out our as-is process for CIP planning and CIP delivery for the whole shebang, the whole process. And since then, one of the goals on CIP delivery was to make our business process models more accessible to our frontline project managers, and use it as a resource for them to be able to access things that they need for project delivery. And so I want to give you an update on kind of what's happened there. And it's been interesting the way the business process models have sparked some conversations, and I think have sparked some movement and change, and are influencing the way we do change here. At least that's kind of my observation. So I just kind of want to lay that out there for this group of like, well, why am I sharing all of this stuff? Just kind of to show you kind of what the impact of doing business process modeling and using the methodology, even if we're not using it perfectly, can have on making some progress. So that's the first part. And then the second part, I want to share a little bit about, our thoughts for year 3 were to focus on project closeout, and that's still kind of a moving piece. And I want to kind of share what's happened and where we're headed for year 3. All right, so I'll go ahead and dive in, and I guess raise a hand if you hear something or if you have a comment. Otherwise, I'll just kind of keep talking. Maybe after I get done with the first part, I'll stop and see what questions or comments you guys have. I just threw up this slide from this was from the workshop at WebTech, just to kind of, here's the methodology, right? And we've focused a lot of energy last year on the as is and the to be state, just getting our business process models documented and starting to use them. Hey, good morning, Zanetta. We just got started. Yeah, we just got started. I'm diving in, just sharing some updates on what we've been doing at KC Water. So
apologize for being late. Thank you.
No worries. Glad you're here. And then really the theme of this kind of conversation is that now that we've built those models, it's naturally starting to push towards planning and implementing improvements. It's kind of just like I said, it's just sparking those things. And now I'm feeling like I'm just trying to keep up with what's going on. So after we laid out the business process models, like I said, what I wanted to do is push this out to our frontline project managers and make it usable for them. And so just in the last few weeks, we felt like we had it in a format and in a way that we could share with them. And so I put together this email and sent it out to our project managers and really all of our team leads who are doing project delivery. And we're calling it our CIP delivery roadmap. And so I rolled that out, and this is kind of like a little bit like I'm thinking about like change management. How can I engage folks that maybe aren't down in the weeds like this group is on business process modeling and all of that. Um, so a couple of things. We've built a SharePoint site. That's kind of part of the way to make this a little more usable for our frontline project managers, and I'll show you that. And then I've been doing like video recordings. So like I'll schedule a Teams meeting with myself, and and I'll share my screen and just do a video demo and save it. And I can even kind of trim it down. And I try and make those like 10-minute videos. And so I sent that out as a demonstration for how to get into the site and how to navigate the site and kind of the idea behind it. So that's what I did a couple of weeks ago. And I'll just show you what that looks like. I think I've shared this before, but this is we've created a project management office SharePoint site. And one of the front pages on this is our roadmap. So it's just a snapshot of our business process model. And I can just kind of come in here. It's a little easier to see. And the way this lays out is we've got CIP planning in the top row, and this is the collapsed version. And each of these has detailed business process models underneath them. But this is kind of the starting point that we use with our project managers to say, okay, these are the steps. This top row is our steps for CIP planning. And then once a project has been approved, it flows into CIP delivery. So into design, and then into construction and closeout. And one of the areas that we've spent a lot of time with, and so I rolled this whole thing out and did a little demo and kind of got to thinking. I'm like, well, if I'm a frontline project manager, it's like, okay, this looks good, but how am I actually going to use it? Until they can actually use it for something tangible in their day-to-day work, they may see it and be like, okay, but now I got other things I need to do. And so we're trying to think about how to get them into this site and to start using it and start giving us some feedback on, hey, is this helpful? Is this beneficial? So that's what we've been doing the last few weeks. And so then after we sent that out, we said, well, one of the things we wanted to do with the site is to make it a place to store all of our contract administration files and templates. We didn't really have a central location to save like all the memos that you have to put together and submit for various steps in the process. And so I worked with our contract administrators and said, hey, this could be a location where we can store all of these things and we can control it so that you guys are the ones that can edit it, and anybody else can just get a read-only version, and then they can save it and build their project-specific stuff off of it. And I got the thumbs up from that group, and so we put all of our files out here. So that was kind of a surprise just by doing this. Like, okay, that created an opportunity to do some collaboration and bring all these files together. So we've done that, and then we said, well, how can we tie this to our business process model? And one of the stages, called stage 4A, is the design professional procurement for detailed design. So it's basically going through the selection and contracting process for design. And so this is one of the drill downs from the summary that I showed. And we spent quite a bit of time working with our stakeholders to get this developed and make sure it made sense, make sure it was correct as our as is. And as we were starting to document our as is, we actually identified some areas where we could make some changes. So just to kind of give you some bearings, it starts with project scope development. There's an RFQP, an advertisement, and then there's a contracting stage in our process. And there's multiple lanes. We've got our project managers down here that do this step. And then our contract administrators have steps that they take care of and coordinate with, and then operations, and then finance. Well, there hadn't always been a lot of good collaboration with our finance folks in the past. And one of the folks that participated in this WISE project with us was this lady right here, Lisa Pleasure. She's our senior analyst in finance, and she just recently got promoted into a role where she is responsible for providing the funding strings and making sure the money for all of our capital projects is, flowing in the right direction, I guess is that simplistic way to say that. And so she was aware that we were working on these business process models. She was involved kind of in the whole thing. And so when we started rolling this out, she said, "Hey, I want to, I'm involved in this. I want you to walk me through this." So we actually scheduled a meeting, and we sat down with Lisa, and we walked through every step in this process. And we showed her where she fits in and where finance fits into the for funding of projects as it's going through the selection and contracting stages. And what this red box over here is, we identified an opportunity to make an improvement. Basically, we looked at this, and previously she was providing, like, the funding string was like the project number and all of the funding numbers for appropriating the funds at the bid recommendation stage. So it was after the project had bid, it was getting ready to go to the council for approval and all of that. And that was had become a bottleneck and a problem in terms of taking a long time to get that step done. And so she suggested, well, we could actually move that further up in the process just by looking at this, and said we could do that at the, when we advertise the project. So she could get that all set up when we advertise the project. And then as long as she knew what the dollar amount was once it bid, she could adjust the appropriation at that point and get it locked in and be good to go. I said, okay. So we basically just modified the business process model to reflect that change. And now she's engaged earlier in the process with our project managers, basically, for that piece. So again, it's kind of getting way down in the weeds, but I just wanted to kind of share that, prior to having business process models, that conversation with our finance person probably wouldn't have ever happened. And we probably wouldn't have been able to at least think through a logical change to the process. And then once we made that change, then it was like, okay, well, how are we going to roll this out and communicate this to everybody? So we actually used this business process model and then that SharePoint site I showed you to help roll it out with our project managers. So like I said, I sent out the original email just to get them into the site. And then I said, well, let's actually use this as an opportunity to push them into the site for something very specific. So I sent a follow-up email. This was a few weeks later, and said, this is an update on this request to advertise memo. So that's where the change happens for them, is on this memo when they put this together for getting ready to advertise a project. They have to now provide that funding string, and they have to work with Lisa to get that number at that stage in the process, as opposed to waiting. So again, I did a little video, like a 10-minute video, just to show them how to get to it and where it's at. And I provided links to these various things. And so, and then I provided a link to this advertised memo. And so if you click on that, it's basically taking them into, this folder that I've mentioned, where our contract administrators store all of our templates. And then here's that template. So they've got it, and we highlighted, here's where the change is, here's where you provide, that information now for finance. So it doesn't stop there. So we did that. And then Lisa came back and said, sent another email and said, hey, after I sent that, she said, I liked the video. She's like, okay, well now what do I do when we get the bid recommendation? Because I used to provide the funding stream there, but now what does that look like? So now tomorrow I've got a follow-up meeting with her to kind of walk through things again, because I'm guessing she's maybe kind of forgotten some of the things that we talked about. So let's kind of reinforce what's going on for her with finance. And again, I attached the business process models, and I was able to use that, to highlight, okay, here's the step you're talking about. We're going to do a deep dive and go into what happens here, and what you need to do to update the appropriation, after the bid, now that we changed the process. So yeah, so it's just been interesting, like I said, to see how this is triggering communications. It's triggering collaboration. It's creating work for me, but that's okay. That's my job, and and I'm hopeful that it's bringing some more clarity to folks who are involved in the process, and then starting to work out some of the bugs and problems that we've had, or just at least bringing them to the surface. So, all right, I see Mike's hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just had a quick question. Yeah, I think this is great. I wondered the specific documents you show, would it be helpful, or do you think it would be helpful at all to show those documents where they're relevant in the process diagram?
That yes. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I actually I was working with one of our contract administrators, and that was one of the suggestions she had was, hey, can we put that in there? And I guess, yeah, Mike, well, I've got you. I know that there's some in Signavio, there's I can't remember what they're called now. There's like a little dotted line with a little thing that looks like a paper that you can list out.
Yeah. Well, that's the data object, but there's also annotations that you can add. Yeah.
Okay.
Both of them have that association, like the dotted line.
And you could then have the link to the document that even if
Right,
it's
and then you can link to the actual document.
Yeah.
even if it's updated in the diagram, it will show the latest version of whatever you got.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's probably a way, if you've got a nice way to edit PDF files, you could probably put a link in there.
Yeah.
So you could distribute that easily.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's really great. It's good to see the application of these things.
Yeah. So and yeah, to the hyperlink piece, we've been kind of exploring that to try and figure out how we can create some hyperlinks that won't get out of date or won't get broken periodically, those kinds of things. And so far, we've just hyperlinked these bottom boxes down here. So for instance, if you click on like project scope development, it'll take you to the SharePoint folder on project scope development. And our thought is for our project managers, we have a link to the templates, but for them, they've said actually what would be really helpful is if they had some examples from some recent projects that they could look at, and then be able to kind of copy and paste things from that into the template to build their new project scope. So
yeah, great.
So those are some of the.
It's the PDF, and they could just link to everything. Right?
Yeah. So that's where we're headed with it. Now the hard part is just like trying to keep up with everything and trying to keep it organized. Not quite sure we're there yet. That it's organized well enough to keep people from getting confused or lost. So that's kind of our next step, is to refine the organization and then start to build some of those tools in.
But the structure, the fact that you've laid out the structure for these documents and that they're all shared in one place is really, really beneficial. That, between that, to have a structure to keep information and and a standard method to represent the business process and stuff. Those are really excellent things you've done, Dan.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Any other questions or thoughts, comments about kind of what I showed there? That, like I said, this is kind of the outcome of what happened after year 2. And now, like I said, we're off to the races and just trying to keep up with ourselves and keep up with our staff and again, make it our end goal is we want to make it usable and of value for them so that it doesn't become stale and we can keep
Jenny's going to leave, so I'm wondering if she has a comment or no.
I just put it in the chat because I do need to hop off, but just really want to emphasize how important it is, I think, to have that as is documentation, like Dan mentioned, of sequencing it out versus just having that conversation, because it really points you to, even if it's Post-its and not in Signavio, just something that shows this happens first and then this and then this. So those swim lane owners can say, you know, I think it could happen earlier, or it really needs to happen later, or maybe we can remove it entirely. You need that as is map in some form to do that. But
yeah, no, yeah, thank you. So, all right. Thanks, Jenny. Have a good rest of the week. All right. I see Duncan's got his hand up and Scott. So we'll go Duncan first.
Yeah, a couple questions, Dan. This was very good. I was just wondering, the SharePoint site, is that available to all the enterprise, the whole city, or is just for engineering department, given that you are collaborating with other departments like finance and others? I was just wondering who has access to that SharePoint site.
Yeah, good question. So, and that's been a little bit of a struggle because well, just to answer your question, it's available for the entire city. So Office 365 is something that the city has invested in, and it's available to all the departments. And our city IT folks are managing that. And so this is SharePoint 365. So it's part of the Office 365 product. A little bit of a challenge that we've had is that here at KC Water, our IT group, so our IT group that's specific to KC Water, has done a lot of development on the old version of SharePoint. That's Microsoft, and they're a little bit hesitant to migrate to Office 365 because there's just a number of things they've got to figure out how to transition for some of the other groups. But they gave us the go ahead and said, well, since this is something new and it's not tied to anything else, you guys go ahead and do this, and it'll kind of be a pilot and a learning experience for them as well. So far that's worked pretty well. But yeah, and then the only struggle we've had with access is that, again, our IT folks are super conservative. So they want to limit access to just internal city employees. Well, we have we actually have a program team that's helping us manage projects for our overflow control program, our smart sewer program. And getting access for those folks has been a little bit of a challenge because they work for a consultant outside of the city. So we're working through that. We've kind of got a workaround for it that we've done, but ultimately I'd like to see us where we are able to open up and share things more broadly with external vendors as well.
Good. I like your example of Lisa, how she got involved in that. But one question, and she asked a very good question, that now that the financing component of it is starting at the beginning of the project, what happened to that particular process when it was at the end? And I was wondering how you ended up changing your process based on that, because you had it at the back end of the process, then you came back, and I like at least that question of, okay, the bids have come in, how do we do it now? And I was wondering, how did you handle that? Did you delete the process from that point on and notify everybody? Send a communication that this is how we are doing? I would just because I know we are faced with that now, that we are changing some of the processes, and some people are still used to seeing, or are still used to the old process. And the idea of, I know there's change management component of this, but I'm just wondering how you navigated that.
Yeah, good question. I guess in this case, it's a little bit easier because previously the steps that we're doing earlier were being done later, and they're pretty much the same exact steps. So we've just communicated to all of our project managers, hey, and shown, hey, in this earlier memo that you put together, you've got to get that funding string and that number that I mentioned, and it's in the memo. Well, they still have to put together a bid recommendation memo after the bids are done as part of that process. And they need to have that number for that memo. And so they've already got it now. It's already been established. They can just go grab that number and pull it forward. But again, yeah, where that affects Lisa is she's like, well, how am I going to know, or where am I going to see this after the project bids? And what we did on our side is we said, okay, well, we're going to create you a monthly report so that you see those approved bid recommendations at the beginning of every month. And so that's what I'm going to meet with her tomorrow, is to show her where that's at and what that looks like and what she's supposed to do with those reports. And they actually come to her via email, and there was one that came in at the beginning of November. So I attached this to our meeting invite, and I'm going to show her, here's this report. So after that bid recommendation is approved, she's going to be able to get access to that through our e-builder system. So she can come in here, and we've got these organized by date. She can go, oh, well, there was one that was done in October. I need to check to see if I need to make any adjustments to that appropriation. And so she can go in and check those numbers. So, and then, if something gets missed or she doesn't make the change there, she has steps further on in the process. It's not shown on here, but this contract execution, this POE process, she's part of that. And that's the point. That's kind of the next point at which if an update to the finances hasn't been made on the project, it has to be made there. So it's kind of a little bit of a built-in check. So,
All right, thanks.
It's a good question, though. All right, Scott.
Yeah, Dan, this is wonderful. I like the way you're progressing it and always improving it. Just a question is, who is the audience for, let's say, the training that you do? Is it the project managers? Is it everybody who touches a project? Who gets exposed to the business process?
That's good question. So far we've gone kind of cast a net pretty broad, and again, this kind of goes into like I'm trying to think through the change management process. So that first email that I sent out, it's going to all of our project managers, all of the team leads that are over those project managers. And then we've also got our kind of executive senior level folks. Then also all of our contract administrators. So they're also included in there. And then I've also included Lisa from finance as part of that, kind of part of that first email. Then after that, I attend a lot of meetings, as I'm sure you guys do too. There's like a weekly engineering leadership team meeting. So I have a spot during that meeting where I mention this and then offer, to answer questions and that kind of thing. And then I also, each of those team leads has a team meeting with their PM. So I've been also, checking in with those meetings and following up, saying, hey, remember this email I sent out last week, or any questions on this? Here's just a quick, overview on what I wanted you to take away from that. Just again, to kind of reinforce that piece.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I was wondering, were you anticipating like taking at each stage gate or a few stage gates, kind of including the contractors and the the consultants even, and the people who might touch the project but aren't team leads and that kind of thing, kind of running through, okay, now we're in this phase and here's what the process is, and basically deal with any questions or course corrections on a project by project basis?
I guess we haven't thought that far ahead yet, but yeah, I think there could be some value in engaging our outside vendors to kind of show where they fit in to the process and what role they might have to play even within that process. So for the most part, like I say, I think we've kept it pretty well internal. But yeah, I can see definitely as we start to use this more and use it more as a tool, it can benefit us to also push it out to our vendors.
Well, I think you were alluded to this, so you're probably doing it, but just thinking of specific project examples, and you were looking backwards, but you could also look forwards, different projects that are in different phases, let's say, just to make it real, for on a project by project basis, so everybody's engaged, but it sounds like you're doing that and you're making wonderful progress.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm trying to look for opportunities to say when I get a question from somebody to say, oh, go check out this on the SharePoint site, and so that they get kind of used to using it as a place to go to, and for us too to say, well, okay, let's make sure we're keeping things kind of organized, keeping things in here, and pushing people out to that location.
Yeah, and my last thing, and I see Cello has his hand up, and I don't want to dominate here, but just it's more food for thought. If there happens to be a project that's coming up that is going to last for a while, but you're catching it kind of early, just thinking about the integration. You mentioned change management, but also that particular kind of large project team, let's say, it could be the workforce and culture aspect using Parjat and the work that's going on there that you're tuned into a little bit yourself, but that could be some benefit to deal with the people side of stuff. And there's technology too, but the people side is so important, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, that's good thought. All right, Cello.
I was really encouraged when you said that it seems like once they saw the business process model, that it kind of most people connected with it. Would that be a correct statement?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what because what I've been thinking is until somebody actually does it, until somebody actually puts one together, it can be a bit of a heavy lift to actually explain business process modeling to a person. So I think what you've also shown is by actually doing the work and getting it and showing, you know what I mean? It takes that initial, without the work that you've done to lay all this out and document it, it would have been, if you just had a conversation, let's do business process model, nobody, you know what I mean?
Right.
There'd be no reaction at all. So it's critically important in your presentation to show that to take this leap and get in and actually build something so that what you use the word tangible. So when it's tangible, something on the table or to talk about, it does make it easier, right?
Right. Yeah, and that was honestly kind of what was a lesson learned from DC Water when Kathleen Getachew shared what they were doing with their BCE process and making improvements, going out and meeting with the stakeholders, the people who are actually involved in the process, and just really walking through each step. And so I said, oh, well, if they can do that, maybe we ought to give that a try. And once we started doing that, yeah, it seemed like people would really resonate with it.
That's fantastic, because maybe a year from now, when somebody says something, else should say, well, maybe we should build a business process, document this.
Well, so, okay, so that was where, maybe that's my transition to part two. But Jeff, I see Jeff's got his hand up, so go ahead, Jeff.
I just wanted to chip in on that. One of the pieces that I've seen is how important it is to spend the time communicating with those groups, explaining what's going on. We can document the heck out of things, but the people we're dealing with don't have the time to read them. And you do need to take the time to sit down. And it's hard for everybody, but you get much further. So the communication aspect is crucial. That also means there's a lot of words on the page, right? People are coming in uninitiated, and being able to understand it's kind of a special skill, and emphasizing that when we develop these things is something I would emphasize, I guess.
That's a great comment. So yeah, that's one thing. I'm really trying to encourage our end users to say, hey, if something doesn't make sense here, or you have an idea or whatever, it's like, send us your questions, send us your feedback. Your questions are what kind of help us understand if it's working right, if it's saying the right things, if it's in the right language. So that's a great comment, Jeff. So yeah.
Excellent.
All right. Well, I'll try to be quicker on this piece of it.
It's
The transition.
okay. This is really sharing and discussing and having people collab. That's what this is all about. So no worries.
Yeah. So I guess my transition piece is we're in year 3 of this effort with the WISE and utility partners, and I'm sure you others on the line have had this happen too, where you start the year and you think, oh, I think this is what we're going to do, and now we're a couple of months in, and I'm like, well, I'm not so sure that what we originally planned is what we're actually going to do. We maybe need to change our focus a little bit. So again, we're going to carry on what I just showed you, and I haven't really said that that's going to be our improvement initiative, but that's going to be happening in the background. And so I guess if we're not able to make progress in the spot we thought we wanted to make, we can shift and say, well, we did make progress on this, and report out on that.
Yeah.
But the area that we wanted to really focus on, and is an area we need to make some improvements, is on our project closeout activities. And we've heard lots of other utilities. It's like a common thing. Project closeout is a challenge, and there's issues, and we've got kind of a number of issues with project closeout, from final invoicing can be a real pain in the neck to make sure we're getting all the right documentation, and it's all of that. So that's kind of one piece of it. And actually closing out contracts. I mean, we just went through an exercise of, hey, we got all of these open contracts with a little bit of money left. Which one of these can we close? So, and that turned into a bit of a fire drill. So another area. And then the third area, and there's probably more, but the third big area is on getting final record drawings as built for particularly our linear assets. So when we build a new water main or replace a water main, actually getting the new drawings and the as-builts and all the data associated with that into our GIS has been a struggle. So, I'm kind of putting up on this. Whoops, I didn't put up on the screen. I wanted to put up on the screen here. I guess where we started this conversation and at the beginning of September was we wanted to look at this stage 5, the construction stage, and we've got this laid out. We've got our construction, and then we've got a kind of completion activities, and then the stage review. And within the completion activities is like where you get your punch lists and substantial completion. This is probably kind of hard to read. Final punch lists, we accept final deliverables, and that's where asset management operations get involved, because there's a transition of those assets. There's contract final completion documents. We've got a process with our, they were called human relations. Now they're the civil. Gosh, I can't remember what they're civil rights. It's the group that makes sure we're getting all of our MBE, WBE requirements right. So there's final completion paperwork for that, and there's final payment and all of that. And then so we started looking at this and said, well, what are the things we need to do, build some more detail into. And then it goes to closeout, where we get final record drawings updated in the GIS. We're closing the contract in our financial system, and all of those steps. So we kind of started there, and then, like I said, I just mentioned we've got kind of three different areas that we could make some improvements in. But the one that came up most recently is the as-built drawings for our GIS. And so I'm thinking we may shift our focus and just really map out that process. And just last week, and this is encouraging too. This kind of hits on what Jenny was saying, and also how this is resonating. This business process modeling is resonating with our staff. So I didn't put this together. My boss, our chief engineering officer, met with our head of inspections that does the final inspections, and the inspectors that review the as-built drawings, and then our water main replacement team lead that manages the project managers. He met with them first and said, well, let's sketch out what the process looks like. And so they did this on a whiteboard and laid out the no, they didn't call it as is, but it's the as is process for record drawings. When a record drawing is received from the contractor, and the information, so there's a coordinate table, and then it goes to our inspectors, our KC Water inspector who's on the project, and they review things. They send it to our GIS people. It goes back to the contractor till they get it right. Once it's approved, then the contractor actually submits as-built. So there's a review of as-built. So anyway, this walks through this as-is process. And then, Mike, to give you a little bit of a shout out here, Deborah Perillo is one of the ladies that attended the business process modeling training in Signavio. So Jeff sent this to Deborah and said, hey, put this into a business process model. So you can see this isn't a business process model. It's just a flow chart. And so he's challenged her, and
Great place to start.
Yeah. It's a good draft. So again, it's kind of like it's our frontline field people are starting to think about like charting out the process. And then now we're going to put it into a business process model. And then the other big player in this is our GIS people. And that's actually Scott Parker manages that group. So he has a meeting on Friday. So I had a meeting with Jeff on Thursday. And then on Friday, I took this diagram to the GIS group and said, hey, I wanted to share with you, there's some work going on here, and we're working towards putting some business process models together. And we really want to see if we can get this working better. And really the issue is it's taking too much time. And sometimes the drawings aren't getting from the inspectors to the GIS, and it's not getting into the GIS. There's not confidence that the information's getting there. And then number two, that it's getting there on time. So
who's the policeman that watches over the whole thing? Is that you or?
Well, I don't think that's the thing. We don't have a policeman yet. So yeah, I think that's part of the process improvement is, so you can see in red here, one of the things that Jeff, my boss, is wanting to do is get some policemen in place. So, and then also the way we implement this process may help with that too, because he wants to implement a workflow in our e-builder software, so that the contractor
so that sort of forces it.
Yeah, exactly. So the contractor then submits it into eBuilder, and then that would kind of force and also be a mechanism to track the number of days it's taking and those kinds of things. So.
The other thing I've seen, Dan, is that once you identify the swim lanes, the responsible parties, and then everyone agrees to the whole model, then they know the handoffs.
Right.
So they know, okay, my responsibility is to hand this off to somebody else, and somebody else knows that I got to receive it. So they can it becomes self-policing. Yeah.
And then the other, so yeah, that's a great point. And you made me think of the other piece of this too, is the temptation, I think, was to just say, hey, let's have our e-builder people create this process in e-builder. Well, and that person reports to me, and I'm on the project management team. We know how the process kind of works, but we don't own it. And so it's hard for us to build a good process in eBuilder without having the full business process model built first. So I think that's where Jeff kind of took a step back and said, you know what, I need to make sure I'm engaging with the people that are the responsible parties, so they buy into it, that they have kind of helped map out the process. Then let's figure out how to build it into our technology. So it kind of ties in Cello with the technology side of it. And then when I presented to the GIS team, they were like, well, before we start going down the path of eBuilder, let's get this mapped out and figure out what the right technology is to really make this process work. Because it may not be eBuilder. So yeah, so that's been another encouraging kind of part of using this methodology, as opposed to just assuming, hey, we've got a fancy technology tool here, let's use it to solve our problem. So, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we don't have much time left, and one of the goals was to say, well, where do we go from here? Kind of a thing. And this just struck me as you were going through this. And actually, when I saw this, if you were able to take the as-built process and put it into in a business process model, with the swim lanes and everything, or even if you went back a step to the higher level closeout process, if we everybody does some form of this. It may not be documented, it may not be optimized, etc. But if we basically said, we're going to have a working session to use an as-is model of what exists and hear from you all, what are the challenges you have with this process, and what lessons have you learned about, some of the business process or the flow. I'm thinking of how might we get more people involved. And that's just one way. There might be better ideas, and maybe there's other sharing that people want to do, but I think that everybody does this in some form or other, right? And it could actually help you also, because you could get outside experience from peers as well. So just a thought.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. That's good thought. So any other thoughts or comments before we can kind of shift? And Cello, I guess you got like 8 minutes. We can
It's okay. I'm prepared because I have 2 versions of PowerPoint.
Okay, good. So
it's longer that I posted, and I have one that has 4 slides that I'm gonna have a back pocket, which I'm gonna use now.
Well, and Cello, before you do your update, so Duncan and Zanetta, that was kind of, last week we got an update from Tacoma. This was my update this week, and you two are the kind of the other core team members that are tackling initiatives. Would you be willing or interested in doing an update for like where you're at and where you're going with your work on the 22nd for the next meeting?
22nd is like a couple of days before Thanksgiving?
Yes. Yeah, it'd be the Monday before Thanksgiving.
Jessica's on the line too. No.
Yeah, I think that whole week I'll be off.
Okay.
Gotta go visit my brother in Pasadena, California, and there. But I can do an update after that.
Okay, so maybe on the 6th of December. That's the next meeting. So, and we may, if we're kind of like we're light and we don't have much, or maybe we would want to do a more thorough update on the WISE initiatives on the 22nd.
Yeah, we'll figure things out.
Yeah, but the next one I can do an update. We are basically proceeding with a sample project also, and training. Those are the 2 areas that we are working on.
Okay. And then Zanetta as well, whenever you're ready to jump in and do an update, I don't know where you guys are at in terms of your effort. Like I said, with us, we're still trying to figure out exactly what we're going to do. So,
well, just real brief, we're going to plan on doing our 2B, and as you all know, Tracy Eckela, who was working with me, left Hazen, And
Right.
so we have trying to make the decision on who's going to be the next lead. Help me with that. And so we hopefully we'll get started. Probably I'm pretty sure because I have that other project, and I'm trying to get that contract signed. So for my biosolids project. So it probably would be the first of the year, but that's what we're going to be working on there. So I'm sorry, we're just a little delayed, but that stuff happens, you know.
Yeah. No,
Jeff?
that makes sense. That's a good update.
Maybe
Thank you.
Jeff or Colin would want to share something. Jeff?
I think it'd be a question of whether Martin had something to share. Colin, what do you think? He's the most likely, and I don't know how far along that work is.
I think he may have left the meeting.
Okay, I can check with him about that. Yeah, because on the CIP delivery side, that's the effort that Martin's involved in, and that's why I looped those guys in, because I think that's the right point of contact right now.
Yeah.
I'll check back with Colin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let us know if they've got something cooking that they want to talk about or get engagement from this group for the 22nd. And yeah, I guess since we just have a few minutes, Cello, you can maybe close out and then maybe give us a little teaser and we can do a more thorough update. If we don't have anything else for the 22nd, maybe we can do a more thorough update on what's going on with the other initiatives on the 22nd.
Okay, I'll just quickly go through this. I have 4 minutes. So come on, share the screen. And so when we were looking at technology, we saw that really we need to define the business needs, which is also business needs and goals, definition, metrics, and then how do we want to manage this process. So, and it really has to also, we have to take a look at the process itself. Is it something that's highly complex, like develop CIP, or is it, something simple, like how do you calibrate a flow meter? What the impact is of this? Is it, limited or critical? And how much do we know about it? Is our knowledge, lacking, or is it thorough and complete? So the idea being that if you have a highly complex project and you don't have good documentation, you're probably, in trouble. So at the end of the day, what we'd like to have is a dashboard that if you look at specific process, and that's kind of where it all begins with the process and indicating technology, that you can look at where do you have weaknesses or strength. What is that first step assessing maturity? And for example, if we have, if on the organization side, organizational values are questionable, it's going to impact the other things. Also, if you have no ability to bring in the data, you're not collecting the data, it'll impact everything else. It will impact whether because you are basically not managing analytics and decision support. And also, if, for example, employee engagement is low, it will impact everything, or we have now tools in place pretty much to look at all these things, and they're not so complex, so that one day you can look at the process, then use these tools and kind of get a sense, how complex is this? Is it critical? Is it documented? And then look at the people side, which is often, which comes into play on the implementation side. So this is sort of like the long-term view, what these tools would accomplish to give you a dashboard. And then from the dashboard, when you get these assessments, some recommendations how to close the gap. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay, Duncan, what do you think?
Yes. It's it looks complicated, but when you describe it, makes sense.
And if there's a way to get where these black arrows are through some questionnaires and a structured method, it shouldn't, it's not impossible. Zonetta, what do you think? I'm almost afraid to ask.
What were you getting ready to ask me, Dr. Cello?
Does this make sense, this kind of dashboard, to when you pick a process that you look at the complexity, how much do you know about it? And does this kind of intuitively make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? I fooled him for today, gentlemen.
Okay, and Jeff?
What you've described makes a lot of sense, Cello. There's a lot of information on this slide.
I know.
So I think it depends on the audience. I think it makes sense to us who are in the room because we get it already.
Yes.
So this comes down to that communication thing again.
Yes, and I went very quickly through only 4 slides. I posted a more detailed presentation. I know we're out of time and people have other things, but just wanted to say this is sort of like the long term where we'd like to be, that we have tools that provide a balanced assessment, not just looking at technology without, if you just look at this lower right corner and you don't look at whether you have business needs defined, don't look at all these other things, things may not work out so well. Okay.
So, Cello, I guess
Good
I'm trying to get my head wrapped around, like, okay, this sounds good. It's like a very cool assessment, and I think people are eager to get their hands on on an assessment. But I know too, it's like, hey, this thing's still in development. So maybe for the next meeting, I don't know if you could help us kind of understand kind of where the vision for like how this assessment is going to, like, how could this assessment be used to actually drive the improvement methodology?
Exactly, and the assessments for all 4 pieces are actually in place, yes, already, but they're in draft form. And I wouldn't say, I would a little bit hesitant to say that I would have it in a couple of weeks, but within a month for sure.
Okay. And if
Cello,
you're looking, I think I remember you might be looking for volunteers to pilot. So this group here might be one. They might have some volunteers.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Scott.
Well, you have one other slide, the one that we liked so much that maybe if you put up, it does help explain it. It has the 4 quadrants and the circles and
yes, I will
change.
Yes, everybody liked it in change management. It says this 832.
Oh,
I
thought it was 22. I'm sorry.
It's okay, but I'll definitely be happy to share that next time.
Yep,
but
yep.